Check, check, check.
Testing one, two, three. We're just testing the YouTube. And we are live on YouTube as well.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Tony. How are you?
Very good. Yourself?
Not too bad.
Good, good.
All busy with your vaccines?
Yeah, busy. Busy is an understatement, but yeah, all good.
That's good.
Good team. Thanks.
Morning, Tony. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Chair.
How you doing?
Very good. Yourself?
Morning, Chair.
Oh, just peachy.
Morning, Chair.
Oh, good morning, Donna. How are you?
Good, thank you. You?
Oh, not too bad.
There's Kim.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning. How's it going, Kim?
I'm very good, thank you.
Chair, Kim will have the
Là, je suis sur le canal anglais. This is the English channel. Can you hear that? Hello, hello. Testing, testing, English channel.
Definitely does.
Testing the English channel.
Been doing a wonderful job.
Okay, I'm going to French.
To be, pulled in partway through a term. I know a little bit about that.
Happy to help. All good. Like Tony said, I got a good team, so.
You do indeed.
Morning, Matt.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad at all. It's a beautiful day out there.
I'm
Kinda sad.
I haven't been out. I'm in the basement.
So am I. I mean, I kind of miss being able to enjoy a little bit of that free vitamin D.
Smaller now. Pretty much spend 10 hours a day down here. Mhm.
But you've got some nice artwork. Like it looks like it's like a bright, like happy space. So that's all right.
You know what it is? It's a really nice basement, and yeah, we have lots of art down here, and yeah, it's really nice. And I made some investments in the basement when I went back to work because realized if I'm going to be working down here, it better be comfortable. So I added a bathroom and things like that, so I don't have to go up the stairs.
Smart.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm doing the like, oh my God, I hope no one asks a question, like run upstairs.
Yeah. Oh. So this looks like childcare day.
It certainly does.
Mhm.
And we have one additional item to come on, and it's just an appointment to one of the advisory committees so that it can rise to council.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning, Caroline.
Morning.
You're the women in red today, Caroline.
Very sharp.
I missed the memo.
It's a political statement.
We have the blue crew as well.
Okay. Women in red, boys in blue.
I guess. Yeah. Okay, we'll give everybody one more minute to join here. Mr. Clerk, we've got a couple of committee members in the waiting room. Here we go. Perfect.
Yeah, there's a part of the problem now is that you have to accept a prompt to become a panelist. And some people may not be used to that new Zoom prompt. So as long as they accept to be panelists, then you can come back in. We're having problems with a couple of people. So.
That's what happens when you accept the software update, right?
Yeah.
No fun. I've had a couple of issues with that this week. Good morning, Councillor McKenney. It's good to see you.
Just figuring out that new update.
Yeah, I've got the same issue. We've had the same thing with like the library report earlier, and it's no fun.
Can't change things all the time.
I know, right? I mean, like they should wait until after the pandemic to start adding new features.
I know.
We just got used to this, you know. I just figured out where the mute button is.
I know.
I don't think I've seen the update yet.
Yeah, I don't know how it's slowly rolling out or what's going on with it. There was a feature that somebody was trying to describe to me and I couldn't see it in the menu. And they're like, oh, have you updated your Zoom yet? So I didn't get a prompt to do that.
No, me neither.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I think we have everyone. So we'll get started. So So good morning and welcome to the Community and Protection Services Committee meeting of June 17th, 2021. We'll call the meeting to order. This meeting is being held remotely through Zoom, which is necessary in these times of physical distancing and keeping everyone safe during the pandemic, although we are seeing our vaccination rates go up. So I'm hoping that before the end of the year, we might actually be able to see each other in person. Please note that those who do not need to participate in the meeting can also watch it on the live stream to the Ottawa City Council YouTube channel. A reminder to participants to please keep your microphones muted until I call on you to speak. I'll provide each committee member with the opportunity to ask questions or comment on each item in the order in which they raise their hand. Committee members will be called on first, followed by any other members of council who have joined the meeting. For panelists, the raise hand option, I don't think it's moved since the update is found at the bottom of the participants list. For attendees, you will find the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. And for those calling in, please use *9 to raise your hand. The committee coordinator and I will be watching for those cues. The usual 5-minute speaking limit will apply. Members are also reminded to submit any motions, visual supports, or declarations of interest in writing to the coordinator at the earliest convenience. We've had a couple of directions come in earlier today and made sure that we had that circulated to everyone. So if you have not received those ahead of time, please make a note to Mr. Desjardins, and we'll make sure that we get that to the top of your inbox. Although the deadlines have passed for residents to register to speak with this committee, residents may still make written submissions prior to council on June 23rd. We do have 8 public delegations on item number 2 today. So if you have any technical difficulty signing into the meeting, you can contact the clerk's office at committees@ottawa.ca or by calling 613-580-2424 extension 28821. Alors, bienvenue encore. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Ottawa is built on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. The people of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa and this committee honors the people and land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. The City of Ottawa honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. Je vous remercie de vous joindre à nous aujourd'hui dans le cadre de notre
Thank you
ordre
for
du jour.
joining us today. For the agenda, we have 2 items to deal with on essential services provided to residents in terms of child care and early childhood care.
And the early years sector. Staff from Children's Services have joined us to present on both of these reports. First, we're going to look at the significant impacts of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic on Ottawa's childcare and early years sector and the vital support that the city is providing to families, children, and service providers. Staff have revised their work plan through 2022 to make sure they are ready to address the ongoing challenges of pandemic response and recovery, such as the health and safety requirements, financial pressures on the sector, and the mental health and well-being of childcare workers. The second report outlines the results of a review of the city's childcare centers. If you've read the report, which I'm sure you all have, you'll know that only one of the city's 10 centers did not meet Council's mandate of serving families who require fee subsidies, nor being located in a vulnerable neighborhood. Le Centre Éducatif Pinocchio, situé à New Edinburgh.
The Pinocchio Center in New Edinburgh. We will hear the recommendations given by the members of staff regarding the ways to deal with the results of this review while maintaining the provision of childcare services in French. I know that several members of the Francophone community joined us today because they are worried about the service, childcare service provision in French. And I understand how important that is, especially for a Francophone ward. It is essential for Francophone families in Ottawa to have access to childcare services and youth services in French. This promotes this feeling of belonging. The Francophone community is preserving the French language.
I look forward to our discussion today and to working together with all of you and staff to ensure that the city continues to provide access to high quality, affordable, and responsive childcare services. Now let's move on to today's agenda. Passons maintenant à l'ordre du jour d'aujourd'hui.
Monsieur le Président, je suis désolé, j'ai levé ma main. Juste pour vous corriger.
I raised my hand just to correct you. You said New Edinburgh, but the center is actually between New Edinburgh and Lower Town. And the residents are very sensitive to the location. So
Lorsqu'on m'avait partagé le brouillon du
when I
rapport,
was given the draft report, I asked them to say that it was really in Lower Town, but the correction was not made by staff. So it's just a direction to staff. I'm sorry to interrupt, but for clarification, I would like that from now on that it would be said that the Pinocchio Center is in Lower Town and New Edinburgh. Okay, I understand. I think that the staff will follow up on this direction. Is the team in agreement with this?
Oh, you are on mute, Mr. Sabrin.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
I believe I understood the question, but if I'm incorrect, let me know. But just as a bit of context, our service plan, which was approved from council in 2019, had set out neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods that we have, and then this is just the nuances of where the location is. Technically, the neighborhoods we have, it is called New Edinburgh Rockcliffe Park, but basically where this is situated is between Lower Town and New Edinburgh Rockcliffe Park. So it's, that's the location. It's at the old City Hall building on Sussex.
So let's just make sure that we reflect that when we describe where this is located, if that's all right. I think that's what the council is getting at, and I certainly support that direction. Okay, great. We haven't even touched an item yet, but Councillor Menard, please, do you have a point of order or?
No, sorry, Chair. I just want to make sure we're lifting that second IPD item onto the agenda as well, the vehicle for hire item.
Yep, I think that we have a motion to lift that item from Councillor McKenney. Please to add it to the agenda today. Councillor McKenney, if you want to move that motion so that we get it on the agenda.
Thanks, Chair.
No problem.
Chair, just be it resolved that pursuant to subsection 89.3 of the Procedure Bylaw, Community Protective Services Committee approved that the information previously distributed on renegotiation of the voluntary vehicle for hire accessibility surcharge be added to the agenda for consideration at today's meeting.
Okay, and is this amenable to everybody? Can we lift that item? Yes. Seeing.
Yep,
thank you.
Okay, carried. Great. And we have one additional item to be added to the agenda as well. I think we have a motion from Vice Chair Eglai, and we may be able to, depending on whether or not there are any questions or whatnot, be able to deal with this in the consent agenda. But Vice Chair, please go ahead.
Yeah, Mark, can you just pop the motion onto the screen? Thank you. So this is, there's a vacancy that's arisen on the Property Standards and License Appeal Committee, which we're required to fill. We'd like to get that done prior to the summer break. The selection committee has met and has a recommendation that needs to go to council for consideration. Asking that this be added to the committee agenda today so that it then can be lifted up to council for approval at the next council meeting.
Is this motion carried?
Carried.
Carried. Okay. We may be able to dispense with this item now unless there's any questions to staff on it, as part of the consent agenda. I think the report has been circulated. The candidate is Bryce Dillon. I see Councillor McKenney. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I just wonder, because of our commitment to gender equity on all of our boards and commissions, just what is the number now in terms of the breakdown of gender on this board?
And do we have someone from the clerk's office that may be able to answer that question? And you are on mute.
I had altogether too many tabs open at once. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Currently on the Property Standards and License Appeals Committee, we have 2 women and 3 men. The recommended candidate for appointment is a male replacing another male on the committee.
Okay, so I just wonder if that any consideration was given to that. I know that we had not had gender parity before. I know there are 5 people, so it won't be parity, but if consideration was given to the fact that that we're not at least reversing that this time around.
Mr. Chair, I would defer to Councillors Luloff and Eglai, who were on the selection panel. I note that on our advisory committees as a whole, we are meeting the 50% gender parity target, which was set by council at the beginning of the term. I know that we do not have any remaining reserve members on this committee, and the selection panel went back to the pool of original candidates and reviewed their qualifications accordingly.
That is correct. Vice Chair Eglai, do you want to make a comment on that before we take a question?
No, I think the clerk's office set it out. Well, I'm not sure how much we can talk about or not talk about at this meeting, but this is a committee that is quite technical in nature, and the individual that people agreed upon has a legal background, and we thought that would be beneficial to the smooth running of this particular subcommittee, or advisory committee rather.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, I think that we need to do everything we can to get at least parity, and where it's an odd number, perhaps we could have it tilted, towards the more underrepresented group, which in this case is women. So I just want to be on record to say that, I wasn't part of the selection panel. I don't have access to all of the candidates, of course, but I did just want to register my concern that we're not meeting or exceeding those numbers. Just given that we're not anywhere close on council, on committees of the whole, where we do have some ability to ensure that women are well represented in spaces of decision making. I think we need to go above and beyond sometimes, and I would have liked to have seen that here. So I'll just say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I want to thank my colleague for raising this. There's nothing wrong with exceeding the bare minimum. And I hope that we'll consider that. And I'm sure that we can find women with technical and legal backgrounds. So I hope that we'll continue to strive, not just to barely meet the minimum, but to exceed it. Thank you.
Understood. Any further questions on this item? Okay, is this report carried to council? Carried?
Carried.
Carried. Carried. Okay. Okay, moving on to item number 1. COVID-19.
Sorry, Chair, if we could go back to roll call and minutes and declaration of interest.
My apologies. Okay, so I've received no regrets. Could the committee coordinator please call the roll? A reminder to members to unmute themselves when they are called.
Councillor Meehan.
Here.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor McKenney.
Present.
Conseiller Fleury.
Bonjour.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor Deans.
Here.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Councillor El-Shantiri,
Present.
Councillor Dudas,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Eglai,
Here.
and Chair Luloff.
Je suis ravi d'être avec vous aujourd'hui. My sincere apologies. I guess we're just raring to go today. Do we have any declarations of interest? Seeing none. Confirmations of minutes. Minutes number 19 for Thursday, May 20th. I cannot believe that it has already been a month. Are the minutes for the meetings of May 20th, 2021 confirmed?
Confirmed.
Confirmed.
Right.
Okay, communications response to inquiries. We have OCC 21-02, use of fireworks. So this has been circulated. So moving on to item number 1 now. COVID-19 pandemic impacts, supports and planning considerations for the childcare and early years sector and Children's Services Work Plan Update 2021 to 2022. There is a presentation for this item. We have Donna Gray and Jason Sabran to give the presentation. So I will turn it over to staff now for that. Thank you very much.
Good morning all, and thank you, Chair. Bonjour à tous, merci, Monsieur le Président. I'm Jason Sabran, the Director of Children's Services, and today I'm joined with my team members, Tracy Gearman and Lynn Martinez, who are Program Managers of System Planning and Program Supports, and Yves Pilon, Program Manager of our Municipal Childcare Services. As referenced today, we have 2 reports in front of committee, the first being the COVID-19 pandemic impacts, supports, and planning considerations for the childcare and earlier sector, and the second being the Municipal Childcare Review Report. I'll provide an overview of the 2 reports with this presentation, starting with our first report, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. I just want to jump to the next slide. Thank you. First, just some background context for our COVID-19 pandemic impacts report. Council approved the Childcare and Early Years System Plan in 2019, which established 10 progressive priorities to better meet the needs of families. And in addition, Council included an action item in the Thriving Communities area of the strategic plan to invest in childcare services to improve services across all city wards. In November 2020, Council also requested an update on the COVID impacts of this pandemic and ongoing supports to the childcare and early years sector. Next slide, please. To summarize the report recommendations for Council was to receive this report for information on the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, approve our updated Children's Services Work Plan, which has been adapted to meet the needs and continue the COVID-19 pandemic recovery and response, and for Council to reaffirm the City of Ottawa's support for building a national childcare program, which is an essential aspect to the COVID-19 recovery. Next slide, please. I'll provide a quick overview of the significant impacts of children, families, and providers during this pandemic. Families are feeling isolated, experiencing challenges with mental health. They are having difficulty accessing essential supports or securing employment. Some families have had to take a leave from work or try to juggle work and care on their own because of the fears of COVID-19 in a group setting. And families with young children are feeling very or extremely concerned about balancing childcare, school, and work. Closures to school, childcare, and professional supports have left little supports for families, especially children with special needs and frontline and essential workers. Inequities have been highlighted, including the impact on women and gender diverse persons, Indigenous and racialized families, and others facing various challenges and systematic barriers. From a childcare worker and early childhood educator's perspective, the ones who are providing these essential services and continue to be resilient while supporting families are experiencing increased burnout, stress, and mental health concerns. This has highlighted the importance of strengthening the social infrastructure of our community, and these essential supports have never been more recognized. I will now ask Tracy to provide an overview of the pandemic impacts and support themes and our 2020 outcomes.
Thank you, Jason. Merci. We have summarized the pandemic impacts and supports into 6 themes to highlight the effects, 2020 accomplishments, and the planning considerations needed to continue the pandemic recovery and response. These themes include the family impacts and need for supports, the disproportionate impacts on women and gender diverse persons and groups facing systemic barriers, the emergency response, closing and reopening of these services, the financial pressures and threats to provider viability, the changing operational health and safety requirements, and the workforce pressures on our dedicated and resilient childcare workers and early childhood educators. Next slide, please. In 2020, we had to shift from our service plan and adapt to provide supports to meet emerging needs. A top priority was ensuring the viability and sustainability of these essential services to ensure they were available for families. Through many initiatives, 97% of the programs in Ottawa were able to reopen and provide these essential supports to families to support work, school, balance, and well-being. We also offered emergency childcare for healthcare and frontline workers during the mandatory closure periods. Our early on child and family centers were able to adapt to virtual services and provide families with much needed supports and information to manage the responsibilities of being a parent or guardian, which became even harder during the pandemic. Training and resources were provided to help service providers with new health and safety requirements to ensure the safety of children and staff. It was the lessons learned and the success of the childcare sector that paved the way for a smoother return to school in the fall. The ability to adapt quickly and effectively was one of the main reasons why our 0 to 4-year-old programs remained open during subsequent shutdown periods. The workforce who deliver these services were provided with mental health and resiliency funding and resources to help them navigate these challenging times. And all this was made possible through our sector partner engagement and collaboration, which Jason will refer to in the next slide. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Tracy. Through our collaborations and working with our System Planning Advisory Group, Table Francophone, Indigenous Early Years Circle, and a population survey of Ottawa parents and guardians, we were able to highlight and fine-tune the planning considerations needed to continue to support the pandemic recovery and response. Highlights of this include continuing to respond to family impacts and changing needs, addressing disproportionate impacts on women and groups facing barriers, responding to the ongoing emergency needs, continuing to support the sector with operational impacts and changing requirements, acting on the immediate workforce pressures, the financial pressures and threats to the sector, and identifying gaps and investments to strengthen the social infrastructure of these essential services to ensure the supports continue to be there for families. Next slide, please. There is a continued need to shift and adapt our work plan to meet the local needs identified in the planning considerations and continue to help the sector remain strong after this pandemic, ensure these essential supports are available for families to benefit children, the greater community well-being, and the overall economy. The work plan had to be prioritized and focused with the anticipation of the pandemic response actions needed well into 2022, and considering our overall resources as our pandemic-related responsibilities have drastically increased, in addition to the regular system management responsibilities. And that is why we're also highlighting the importance to continue to work and advocate with our provincial partners to eliminate the planned program delivery funding cuts in 2022, which would have a significant impact on the sector. The work plan has deliberate actions designed to preserve the sector and ensure future access and a reliable system that is ready for an active participation in a national program. Next slide, please. The recent federal announcement of a $30 billion investment over the next 5 years to move towards a universal childcare system aligns very well with the city service system plan priorities and could influence plans over the next 5 years. The objective of the program would be a 50% reduction in fees by the end of 2022, an average of $10 a day by 2025-26, ongoing growth in spaces, and meaningful progress in improving and expanding before and after school care. A national program has the potential to address both historic issues and these compounded as a result of the pandemic that this report has highlighted. It is also vital to the COVID-19 response recovery, given the benefits for children, which would support their social development, school readiness, and academic achievement. Families would access more affordable programs to facilitate work or education and support their overall income and mental health. It would increase the labor force participation of women who have experienced greater job loss, would also assist social well-being of the entire community when more families can participate fully in the social and economic life of Ottawa, and the economic benefits of this program would stimulate and support the pandemic recovery. For all these reasons, staff are recommending Council reaffirm the City of Ottawa's support for building a national childcare program. Next slide, please. Finally, I want to just thank everyone for their efforts throughout this pandemic. Thank you to our sector partners, including the Child Care and Early Years System Planning Advisory Group, Tableau Francophone, Indigenous Early Years Circle, the design teams, and all our dedicated children's services staff for your tireless efforts to plan, coordinate, and respond to ensure these essential supports continue to be available for families. Thank you to our many city partners, including Ottawa Public Health, the Human Needs Task Force, the Community and Social Services Department, Bylaw and Regulatory Services, and the list goes on. It was a true city effort to navigate this pandemic together. And finally, a sincere thank you to the childcare workers and early childhood educators and all service providers for your dedication to providing these essential services to families and for being there for our children and families when we needed them the most. In the minds of families, they are the unsung heroes of this pandemic. Next slide, please. I will now jump into the second part of our presentation that will focus on the second report, the Municipal Childcare Review. Next slide, please. For background context, Council reaffirmed the mandate for the municipal childcare centers back in 2016, which is to serve families who face various barriers and systemic challenges. There was also 2 audit recommendations specifically related to our municipal childcare centers, which are being satisfied through this report. As mentioned previously as well, Council approved the service plan in 2019 and added an action item within the City of Ottawa strategic plan to invest in childcare services. Next slide, please. To summarize the recommendations, staff are recommending a phased approach to ensure we are seamlessly transitioning these services to minimize impacts to families and to not add to burden during this pandemic. The first step is to have a policy decision from Council to transition the city-run services at Centre Éducatif Pinocchio to a high-needs area and meet Council's mandate. It is a significant effort to transition a center that minimizes impacts, taking time to determine a new location in a high-needs area, finding the land, and building. The second step would be for staff to develop a business case and capital funding plan to facilitate the transition and assess the highest needs, look at the population growth, and the opportunities we have with major projects like affordable housing or through the federal national plan, and allowing the time to consult with stakeholders and determine our capital financing needs. Staff would report this back for Council approval in Q1 2023. And I will now ask Yves to describe our transition plan.
Merci, Jason. Afin de réduire les répercussions sur les familles, les services de Pinocchio et de foster.
In order to reduce the impact on family, the Pinocchio Center will be established and services can be transferred in a more harmonious way. It's important because the services in French are essential for Francophones in Ottawa. We recommend to the Council to give the order to the personnel to work with the owner of the building in order to maintain the Francophone services that are essential. This plan is also important because of the pandemic, on which was based the first part of the presentation. Those services are essential for children, for families, and the needs have never been so well expressed.
Would continue till this business case and capital funding plan can be approved by Council and these services can be seamlessly transitioned. This is an important as having access to Francophone childcare services and early years services are critical in Francophone families in Ottawa. We are recommending Council direct staff to prioritize the work with the Pinocchio landlord and a not-for-profit childcare provider in an effort to maintain these critical Francophone services. This implementation plan is also important as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, which the first portion of the presentation has shown. These services are essential to children, their families, and the need has never been more recognized. Thank you. Jason? Next slide.
Thank you, Yves. A quick overview of our centers. We have 10 locations offering 387 spaces, 2 centers which offer Francophone programming. A total of 4.2 million municipal funds is required to deliver these services, which results in a leading model of what most advocates want for childcare. We have qualified staff with fair wages, which assist with the labor force participation and the women's and gender equity strategy. The services we offer ensures access for families facing various barriers, and indirectly, this also ensures our costs of fee subsidy program remain lower, which allows us to serve more children throughout the city through our many partners. It also increases our provincial allocation as the province recognizes cities who invest more than their legislative share. These programs to the children provide positive influence on social development, school transition, and academic achievement. It's the investments at the early stages of life that have proven to make a significant difference. Next slide, please. With regards to the mandate review, we did a comprehensive review using many indicators and data summarized into two categories, that being serving families who face various barriers and the community childcare capacity. We required a minimum of 70% and all but one scored above 70%. Next slide, please. Pinocchio, which as we discussed at the start is in between Lower Town and New Edinburgh and located in the old City Hall building on Sussex, is not serving many families who face various systematic barriers, is not located in a vulnerable neighborhood, and there are other community providers that families are choosing. Outside of the mandate review, Foster Farm, which is in off of the Pinecrest and Queensway area, is serving families that meet council's mandate, and our staff continue to offer high quality services. However, we are in an aging apartment building built in the back in the 1970s, which was originally converted from apartment units, which has presented challenges with the physical space. Staff wanted to raise the awareness of this to be proactive in addressing this concern and looking at options within our business plan. Next slide, please. Eve already spoke a bit of the implementation. I'll just take a chance to stress the importance of maintaining each space during the COVID-19 pandemic and the importance of seamlessly transitioning these spaces. From a parent lens, it is important we continue to support every family we can during this challenging time. The school and school-age programs being closed have really showed us how essential these services are to families and often is the biggest difference in their well-being during these challenging times. A seamless transition will ensure we do not add to the burden families are experiencing. This will also give us time to thoroughly determine a new location and consult with stakeholders and bring this decision back to council, especially with the potential of a national program and further developments in the childcare sector. Next slide, please. That does conclude our presentation. Obviously happy to answer any questions, but thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we do have two items here, two separate items. So before we do have 8 delegations on item number 2. So before we dispense and deal with item number 2, we will begin with questions to staff by committee members on item number 1. This is the COVID-19 pandemic impact supports and planning considerations for the child care and early years sector and children's services work plan update. So 2021-2022. So we'll do questions to staff on that item. I think we have a motion on that item as well.
Mr. Chair, just on a point of order, I'm wondering if it wouldn't make some sense to just take these two reports together.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the will of the committee, that's exactly what we can do. No problem. So we would move on to questions, I think
we would just hear from the delegations and then ask all of our questions on the reports. I think I would prefer to consider the two reports together.
Sure. Okay. Is everyone okay with that? Yes. Is he nodding? Wonderful.
Okay.
All right. Good. So we will now move on to our delegations. We have 8 delegations on item number 2 today. We will begin today with Christine Constantine and Michael Petrick. So please go ahead for 5 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. I will be speaking on behalf of Michael Petrick, my lovely husband. Thank you, councillors, members of the committee, Mr. Chair. My name is Christine Constantine, and I am a parent of a child currently attending the Pinocchio Daycare, a constituent, a community member. I'm speaking here on my behalf, but also on the behalf of the many parents who have signed a letter opposing the changes recommended in the June 2021 Municipal Child Care Center Review Report, specifically the recommendation of the City of Ottawa to cease operations at the Pinocchio Daycare located at 111 Sussex. This letter will reach your desks shortly. I'm also speaking on behalf of the over 75 people who have signed a petition opposing this recommendation, and I will be pleased to share that petition with you as well. But before providing my comments and hearing from other parents, I would like to thank the members of the Community and Protective Services Committee, councillors, and other present parties for the opportunity for us to comment on the recommendations proposed in the June report. Councillors, members, your continued work and dedication to serving the public is recognized and appreciated. We are grateful for your service, especially in these times of COVID, and we appreciate your attentive ears today. Committee, we strongly believe that families in Ottawa should have more, not less, access to high-quality Francophone childcare. We further support that the city's time and effort could be best spent determining how to deliver more services rather than how to cease the operations of a well-run daycare that serves our community. I will present 3 statements and questions to you. The June report was shared with parents of children attending the Pinocchio daycare on June 9th, 2021. That is only 5 full working days before today's meeting. This provided key stakeholders with extremely limited time to review the report, consider it, consult, and engage our representatives. Despite this short timeline, we came together as a community, drafted and agreed upon a letter to our councillors, launched a petition, and prepared to speak to you here today. My first ask of the committee is please consult us. Consider the children and parents of Pinocchio daycare and those on the waiting list, the 115 families on the waiting list. Provide us with a respectful amount of time to consider and engage in these discussions and allow us to be part of the discussions you are making that will affect our children, families, and communities. Number 2, committee, we understand and we respect your mandate. The June report indicates that Pinocchio is not servicing families who require a fee subsidy. Pinocchio serves families in Lowertown and Vanier. There are 115 families on the waiting list. If Pinocchio daycare is not meeting your mandate, we ask why. And this was not addressed in the report, but we know the demand is there. So our second ask is this: has the city considered how to make Pinocchio align with its mandate? What has been done to address this issue in the past? Have the following options be considered? Better communicate with families in need that there is a city-run daycare at 111 Sussex. Work with daycare management to meet the quotas. Review transportation options from high-needs neighborhoods or other options to better understand how to align Pinocchio with your mandate. Finally, our councillors, and thank you, Councillor Fleury, for your email of last night, have indicated to us that the city is not closing the daycare, but handing over its operations. This was not entirely clear in the report. The report states the city will cease operations at Pinocchio. Any plans to hand over services to another organization should be consulted with affected stakeholders. That includes parents and future parents of the Pinocchio daycare and those on the waiting list. So my final ask is that we would like the city to explain how it will ensure the continuity of high quality Francophone daycare services at the Pinocchio location at a reasonable price for at least the next 15 years. Again, we strongly believe that families in Ottawa should have more, not less, access to high quality, reasonably priced Francophone childcare. And we ask for the city to focus the efforts on delivering more services rather than ceasing the operations of a well-run daycare in our community. Thank you again, councillors and committee members, for your excellent work.
Thank you very much. Questions to our delegation. We have Councillor Fleury. Please go ahead for 5 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as we bridge through the item, I hope you can give me some diligence. I do want to make a disclosure. So I don't have a conflict of interest on the item, but for the pertinence of committee, I do want to clarify that my little Jacob was a former little one at Pinocchio until pre-COVID, and will be starting school in September. So I don't have a particular vested interest other than I know the parents, I know the employees, and I know the site quite well. So I just wanted to make that for public record. Christine, thank you for attending today, and thank you for the meaningful engagement. I want to understand a few things. One, which is I do have questions for staff on a number of points you've raised. in terms of getting them on public record and getting clarifications. And I will do that at the end of delegations. But can you clarify that ultimately, as parents, you have a number of elements. One, the location's great, the team is great, and it's francophone. So you're asking ultimately for the operations to continue. The back end, say of is it a city staff or is it a non-for-profit? Unless it affects the charges, what you're looking at is a francophone and the spaces to remain, right? You're not necessarily invested on the operations. My diligence or our responsibility is to make sure both. One is we meet the mandates of the city, but also that that the existing service remains no matter who operates it. So I just wanted to clarify that little aspect. Is there a particular reason why you would feel the city versus a non-for-profit, if it's the same space and service that is guaranteed to continue? You know, I just want to make sure that I understand your concerns if there is a bridge to another operator under the same environment.
I'm happy to speak on that. And let me also say that some of the other parents that are speaking here today will address that in more details, but I will make a couple points. Number one, we trust the City of Ottawa. You guys are doing a great job. You are consistent in your services. It's not only about being well priced, you have well-trained people. We know that you're going to be there for us, as you know, for your own little one. We trust the City of Ottawa to do an excellent job on a long-term basis. Number two, we respect diversity. We want to be part of a diverse, well-represented group of parents and children at the Pinocchio daycare. We do not necessarily want to be at a daycare that doesn't have that diversity and doesn't have families from Lower Town and all across New Edinburgh and also Vanier. So I'll put those 2 points out there, but I will note that my colleagues, my parents attending here today will elaborate on some of those points. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, anything further, Councillor Fleury? No? Okay, great. Yes, we have questions from Vice Chair Eglai. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for coming out this morning and making delegation to the committee. I just wanted some clarity. Am I to understand, and again, you seem to be speaking on behalf of a number of parents, am I to understand that the group of existing parents, if you will, don't dispute the fact that the center is currently not servicing people in need of subsidy to have their children in daycare? Did I get that correct, that that's currently not happening?
I don't have the information to confirm how many parents are subsidized or not subsidized, but what I will say is that there are families in need in the area that Pinocchio should be serving, and that we do feel that if we could support the daycare in locating those families and putting in steps to ensure that the city meets its mandates, that we are confident that Pinocchio could probably meet that mandate, very likely meet that mandate. I do believe that it is unknown by many communities in need in this area that Pinocchio is a city-run daycare. And we do believe that this is an issue of communications and advocacy. We are sure that if we effectively communicated that this was a city daycare, that you would easily meet the mandate.
And you understand the staff is not suggesting that that the city daycare stop functioning, just that it be moved to an alternative location, and that a daycare efforts be made to facilitate a daycare staying in the current location.
We understand that statement.
So there would be 2 daycares in effect where there's currently 1 to serve the same catchment area.
This is under the assumption that the city creates a daycare that is close to Pinocchio that provides Francophone services. we do not have the information that that will be the case.
Okay, well, I believe that's, and I'll take this up with staff, but I believe that's the intention of staff is to have something set up which will be accessible to people in need of subsidy, and will serve that population. But that's a question that I'll left for staff. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions to this delegation? Seeing none, our second delegation today is, we have Ben Ray or Andrea Tellerico. Do we have one of you with us today? Yes, I see we have Andrea. Andrea, please go ahead for 5 minutes and welcome to the committee.
Donc, bonjour, mesdames et messieurs du conseil. Je vous remercie.
Good morning, committee members. Thank you for your time today, as well as the fact that you are offering such services for early childhood. And I benefit from exceptional, outstanding services at the Pinocchio Center for almost 2 years now. When I was just starting going back to school, all my subsidy was used to pay for the daycare fees. And the closing, because it is a closing, does not affect us directly because, as Mr. Fleury said, our child will be starting school in September. But we're here to make sure that there is service continuity in French for the Lower Town and New Edinburgh and Vanier population, as well as the Byward Market. We want these services for other parents. The arguments I'll be presenting today will deal on linguistic rights of the Ottawa Franco-Ontarians. Since 2001, the Appeal Court of Ontario recognized that the executive and the levels of government must ensure the survival of institutions that are important for Franco-Ontarians. So I'm asking you today, what is more basic than services to early childhood in their mother tongue? There's clearly a demand for early childhood services in French. There's 115 families right now on the waiting list for Pinocchio. So we waited ourselves almost 2 years having registered our girl to the daycare center even before I was confirmed pregnant. This decision by the city will have a major impact on women and Francophones. So we think that your decision would lead to inequities while it's looking to redress some inequities. There are almost 20 public French schools in the area, but only 2 municipal Francophone daycare centers. The city well, the parents have a choice to make: send their children in a private daycare or send them in an Anglophone daycare center. The second choice will place systematically the Francophone children in a disadvantaged position when they get to primary school. And it's a choice that may be made by disadvantaged families. This is what happened to Francophone families in Ottawa, and it was recognized by the Court of Appeal in 2001. So I have 3 questions for the committee. And I must say that we also prepared some access to information requests to understand the decision-making process of the city. First, why is the geographic reality of Francophone areas in Ottawa were ignored in the report? We know that the most Francophone areas in the city are the Lower Town and Vanier. Pinocchio is very well located to serve this population, and it doesn't seem to be part of the report. And the second question, what's the origin of this transfer of the Sussex Center to a nonprofit or a private center when this option is nowhere to be seen in the report? Was this decision made before the report was tabled, or is it just a speculation? We're asking for confirmation in this regard, as was mentioned by Christine already. And how can we talk? the city is only transferring a budget envelope, is not protecting the Francophone character and serve. There's no basic characteristic of this daycare center that will be transferred actually. So I thank you for your time. I'm available for your questions, and especially I am hoping to get answers to these questions. Thank you, Mrs. Talarico. Councillor Fleury. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I call you Andrea? Thank you, Andrea. You talked about the information. From what I'm reading in the report that was presented on page 5, we have a little more clarity regarding the Francophone aspect and the nonprofit organization. Oh, I lost you. There you are. I thought you had left. So I'm coming back to the basic. I know where we are at today. I think you understand that too. You mentioned it. There's no immediate risk for you and your family, but you're thinking of service provision in French for other parents. I don't want to correct you here, but I'm Francophone. I'm proud of it, but I don't represent the most Francophone community of Ottawa. My colleagues in the East will remind me of this. So the Francophone population are much more present in the eastern part of the city, and they also have needs. I just want to clarify this aspect. Doesn't mean that we don't need Francophone services, but everything you raised there, the statistic of the Francophone percentage, it's important to say that there are Francophones everywhere in the city. And in terms of percentage, the Orleans area specifically has more Anglophones, Francophones, sorry. Now, I'd like to get back to your concern. Is it possible that in the end, we end up with more Francophone spaces? Take Beau-Soleil, for example. It's a very different environment. Beau-Soleil, back then, with a general director of social services that wanted to close the centers in the city. We're not there today. We're talking about a transfer. So they closed Beau-Soleil for renovation purposes. And what we saw is that in Sainte-Anne, there's a new Francophone center just right beside, and the Beau-Soleil space is operated by a nonprofit organization now. So as a Francophone, yes, there were some union issues in that case too, but in terms of Francophone spaces, Lower Town has more spaces now than before. Is that situation possible for this? If we were able to protect Pinocchio as a Francophone center, no matter who's in charge of operating it, so it would remain a Francophone service, and we would even double the number of spaces. So I'd like to understand your perspective. You say that we're going to lose some Francophone spaces because from what I see, there would be an opportunity to increase the number of spaces. Well, I think you're mixing. I don't want to mix up two things. Is the Francophone character, that's very important. If you tell me that we'll have 2 daycare centers in French, that's fantastic, but that's half the story. The basic character of Pinocchio is that it's unique, it's Francophone, and most importantly is it's Michel, Cecilia, Marie, Joanne, Marlène. It's the staff who's extremely qualified. A director with over 20 years experience. It's a very unique center in a unique location. And these services are offered by an extremely qualified staff in French in a beautiful location with a play area that's separated for the very young and the a little older. They can move around. The lighting is fantastic. The children can walk around in the building. So that can't be only for the richest in the city that can pay more money if ever the daycare was unaffordable. You know, it should be for everybody there's 115 families on the waiting list. So there are families in need. They should have access to same services as we do. So it's not just a question of French. You have a legal and moral obligation to provide basic services to Francophone society in a minority situation in the city. So everybody knows that. But there's also an inequity issue here. Why is such a unique place, such a beautiful place, should only be accessible to those who can pay the services of such a center? So why having two francophone centers, that would be great. But as I said, I'm not too concerned. My child will start school in September. But for the rest of the people, yes, that concerns me, and it concerns a lot of parents. Well, what you're talking about, the fees, I will be asking questions to staff earlier because it's quite relevant. I recognize what you're saying. I grew up in municipal daycare centers and as a child, and that's where I brought my child. So what you're saying about the service, I do believe in that, but that's a higher level conversation. There's 3 levels. There's the city operations with a very clear mandate. There's the nonprofit operation, and there's the profit operation. So I recognize what you're saying. And if Michelle and her team were to lose their job, I would have done the same thing that I did for Beau Soleil. But you recognize their professionalism, and it's true, and I recognize it too. So thank you for your presentation today. Thank you, Councillor Fleury. Any other questions for this delegation? Well, thank you again, Andrea.
On a maintenant Jennifer Brunet et Martin Dupuis pour 5 minutes. Vas-y, merci. Et bienvenue à notre comité.
And welcome to our committee.
Are our witnesses here? Jennifer and Martin?
No?
No?
Monsieur Coordinateur?
Their chair, I'm just trying to transfer them over to the panelists, but again, because of the Zoom, they may be having difficulty.
Je comprends. Il y a une boîte de sélection.
I understand there's a selection box that comes after the promotion to panelists. You have to click on that box to accept being a panelist.
On peut donner une autre quelques secondes pour tirer.
A few more seconds.
Est-ce qu'on a déjà un défi? Oui.
On a des problèmes au moment.
We're having problems. So maybe we could hear somebody else and come back to these witnesses after. Yes. In the meantime, Kajida Marfouk, you have 5 minutes, and welcome to our committee. Good day to everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to express myself on this very important subject that is very close to my heart. Before starting, I'd like to explain that right now I'm talking as a subsidized parent that has a place at Pinocchio. So very briefly, I'd like to explain my case. As a mother, I had to wait for 20 months before finding a francophone center for families. When I hear when I hear somebody saying that there's not enough people for the daycare, I can't understand that. It was my first choice. There's a list asking our choice. Nobody phoned me before a whole year. So that explains what people are saying, other parents saying. There's not enough subsidized families at Pinocchio, but there's no information given to the parent to explain why not. I live in lower town, and I know a lot of people, notably my neighbors, who tell us that Pinocchio is a governmental daycare. So there's a certain image that is associated to Pinocchio. Most parents think that it's a daycare only for civil servants, and I was part of those parents. I was able to phone them when the pandemic started, because I told myself maybe have a chance because civil servants are not in the building. This is my question. Could you share with us what are the action plan? The problem doesn't date from today. What is the plan? Can you tell us what was done, and that's why it didn't reflect the mandate? Mothers, there's a lot of mothers who are living alone in my neighborhood, so I can't understand when you say that you can't meet your quota, because I am sure that you could find people for that daycare. Can you share the action plan so we understand better what's happening? Second, in that action plan, did we think of other alternatives before thinking of closing that daycare that we really need in the lower town? Did you think to communicate with families so we can change that image so that people understand that it's not because it's a daycare in a governmental building, it's a daycare for everyone, a municipal daycare, and people are waiting for a place. When I told my neighbor that my daughter had a place at Pinocchio, it's as if I'd had sent my child to Harvard. We know that Pinocchio has a very good reputation. It's really something that the city should be proud of. And when we hear that we want to close that daycare, I can't understand. And the last thing, we're talking about increasing the number of subsidized families. If my daughter was not at Pinocchio, my daughter would not be able to be in the same daycare as Mr. Fleury's children, for example. I think it's, I can bring my child to daycare, and instead of hearing cars, they can hear ducks and see the river. It's our right to be able to profit from the same thing as rich families. Your time is over. A question for our witness, Mr. Fleury, you go ahead. Thank you, Khadija. Thank you for your testimony today. I'd like to make certain clarifications. First of all, let's start at the high level. We recognize that outside Pinocchio, the waiting list does not work. Parents think that they're going to be called, and they don't receive any calls. I know that as a group, it's in our working plan to completely standardize the approach. So if we take information from parents, there's no centralized system to control expectancies. And there's a whole different, each operator has a different way to join parents. This is an important issue and challenge, the fact that parents think they're going to be called when they put their name on a waiting list, but nobody calls them. As far as subsidies are concerned, I want to reassure you, in the past, subsidies were linked to a certain daycare. This is not the case anymore. If, as a parent, you meet the financial factors, you can get this subsidy. You could go to any daycare with the same grant. For Pinocchio, I'm going to ask 3 questions to the personnel of the city. What can we do to keep Pinocchio as a daycare called Pinocchio? How can it continue to be a Francophone daycare? I'm going to ask those questions because I think they're relevant. And they go, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions, but I wanted to make those comments. Except for Councillor Alchiri, I think one of the person who has been sitting on this committee for the longest. Thank you. It's the first time, I believe, that you admit that you are old. Are there other questions for our witness? Thank you very much for having appeared before us today. Thank you. Mr. Coordinator?
No?
Ms. Brunet et Dupuis?
Est-ce que vous êtes ici?
Et puis dans la salle d'attente, mais vous pouvez peut-être la demander.
Are you here? She's not in the waiting room, but maybe you can ask if she's there. Ms. Brudet, can you accept being a panelist for your testimony of today?
No?
No?
Okay, on peut retourner encore. Alors maintenant, on a Charlotte Landry pour...
Charlotte Landry, 5 minutes. Good day, Ms. Landry, and welcome to our committee. Good day, Mr. Chairman. Good day to the member of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to talk today. I want to start by saying that I'm in agreement with everything that has been said up to now. I really think like them. I'd like to stress the fact that
the transition to a new provider is that the fees would increase and the quality of services would diminish. What are the guarantees that the committee can give us to say that transitioning to a private provider will not increase the fee? We are currently paying about $65 per day. We're both working parents full-time, but this is very expensive. We're happy to pay that price to have a good quality service. But what is the guarantee the committee can give us that once it's been transitioned to a private provider, the cost and the quality will remain the same? I would have a question to Monsieur Fleury, who referred to La Garderie Beau Soleil. I would be interested in knowing how much are the fees at the Beau Soleil daycare now that there's been a transition in provider. I would be very interested in knowing because these are my main concerns. I would also like to say that contrary to Christine, who was very gracious with the committee, I feel that the committee and the people who worked on the report didn't do their homework. They haven't discussed any alternatives of how to keep the daycare, the municipal Francophone daycare open. It seems to me they skipped to the easy solution, let's relocate. what Khadija has said is that seem to be main issues with the visibility and communication of the daycare. The daycare is located near 3 neighborhoods that have a lot of families with low revenues: Vanier, By Market, and Lower Town. I cannot understand how there haven't been other alternatives considered to increase maybe public transport, increase the visibility of the daycare before jumping to that easy solution of just relocating the daycare. Third, I would like to say that the federal government just released the budget 2021, which is announcing $30 billion to make sure that daycare services are accessible and have good quality. Has there been any effort done by the City of Ottawa and by the committee to speak with the federal government and see if they could increase the funding to make sure to keep this municipal daycare open? How can the City of Ottawa think of closing a municipal daycare when the federal government is announcing $30 billion to make these services affordable and accessible? It seems to me so contradictory. And it seems also it's contradictory. You just before there was a presentation on the December 2019 Ottawa Strategic Plan, and the City of Ottawa said that they are committed to improving the access, the affordability, and the quality of daycare services. How can you recommend to close a municipal daycare that is so well run, that is so good for parents and for children in this context? And I would like to, at the end, I would like to highlight that so far you've seen full-time working moms speaking on behalf of this daycare. If you decide to close this daycare, you will be once again affecting disproportionately, it will disproportionately affect full-time working women who work hard to make sure that their kids can go to good quality services daycare. I really ask you to reconsider the recommendation close and transition to a private provider and find other alternatives, because this daycare is working well and it should continue to be run by the City of Ottawa because great services and services at a good price. I thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce qu'on a des questions? Do we have any questions for this delegation? Conseiller Fleury, vas-y pour 5 minutes.
Juste pour clarifier, Charlotte, moi, j'ai pas les frais, mais je vais...
Thank you, Charlotte. As I said a bit earlier, I'm going to ask the city to confirm certain data, like the price of daycare at the Best Soleil. I recognize when you're talking about the closure, if it's managed like Pinocchio with the same name, with the same number of places, if we can guarantee that, that's what you're looking for. I don't want to talk for other parents, but yes, if the committee can assure us that it would be the same quality of services, I wouldn't be worried. I'd be very happy to know that the daycare stays open for Francophones. But once you've done the transition, you won't have any more power on the operators. So I don't see how you can assure us that the services will cost the same and will be as good. I'm going to ask questions on that. I recommend that you stay with us. Thank you very much. Are there other questions? No, thank you very much, Ms. Landry.
Do we have Madame Brunet and Monsieur Dupuis yet?
Yes, they have left, Mr. Chair.
Okay, understood. If they're able to rejoin, please interject and let me know.
Will do.
I'd like to hear from them. And I'm sorry about the technical difficulties if they're tuned in on YouTube. Maintenant, on a Marie-Josée Boileau et Sean Nash-Rudy pour 5 minutes. Do we have these witnesses with us? Mark?
Just looking here. think people are having problems with no, I don't see them as well.
Understood. Okay, just keep an eye, and we want to make sure that everybody that wants to be able to speak on this item has an opportunity to. So if we do see, the 4 people pop up in the participants list, we want to make sure that we give them an opportunity to speak on this item. So I appreciate that. Up next, we have Nina Di Stefano. Do we have Nina Di Stefano with us today? Just a general reminder to the committee, if you're looking for interpretation services, it is at the bottom of your screen with a little globe icon. And further to that, any participants that are having trouble joining today still have an opportunity before this rises to council to submit comments in writing if we do continue to endure issues with getting you on to speak. Although we will make every effort to ensure that you do get a chance to speak with the committee today. Mr. Clerk, do we have Nina Di Stefano with us?
The only person seems to be left is Sarah Desrochers.
Understood. Okay. Madame Desrochers, à vous la parole.
Bonjour. En fait, je veux juste dire que je suis en accord avec les points des autres mamans. J'étais ici principalement pour écouter. Puis voilà, donc je ne prendrai pas plus de votre temps. Merci beaucoup.
OK, parfait. Est-ce qu'on a des questions?
I'm in agreement with what has already been said. Are there questions?
Just want to make sure that we do give an opportunity. We've got 3 groups of delegates that have not been able to get through. Have we been able to contact or get them into the chat, Mr. Clerk?
Not at the present time. No, they have not come back in.
Okay, understood. So there still is an opportunity to submit comments in writing. Should you wish to do so. So any members of the public that are watching on YouTube or those that may have had trouble today getting on, just want to remind you that you're able to do this. Okay, so we'll move on to questions to staff on both items, item number 1 and item number 2. So we do have the review and also the pandemic impact. So please, let's begin.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order.
Oh, yes. Please go ahead.
We had a number of delegations that referred to a very specific location, and so that we don't waste their time, they said they're all working moms. I'd like to get that portion of the item, questions and answers in the early stages. I recognize we agreed to merging both reports, but because of the delegations, I think it'd be appropriate if we have questions on the Pinocchio front right away.
Sure. I mean, I'll ask committee members, that are coming on the board to ask their questions on that portion. But I mean, it's up to committee members on how they want to use their time. But I think that we do have a request to keep it to germane to item number 2. We'll start off today with Councillor Meehan. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, everyone. I just would like to ask staff about a timeline for the report on Pinocchio and the amount of time that the parents had in order to digest this report and to decide what they're going to do. If there's somebody on staff that can let me know, was it under a week's time, as one of the first delegates said?
Chair, through you, just a bit of a recap of our plan. Our plan is to bring a council report back in Q1 2023 on the options of what to do with Pinocchio, right? We don't know any of this. We need the time to build this transition plan, figure this out, consult with stakeholders, including parents, and continue to do that. It is correct that when the report went live with everyone, we communicated with many stakeholders to make sure they were aware of this information. But part of this is to ensure we can seamlessly transfer and minimize any burden to families. So we want to take the next year to develop this business case while these services continue to operate, so we can bring it back to council, show them where the high needs area are, see what the capital financing needs are, and then from there also consider how much time we need to transition into a new location as well. So, this could be potentially up to a 5-year transition plan, right? Nothing is happening until then. That's why we wanted to bring this back to council and do that.
No, Mr. Sabra, I fully appreciate that.
Je comprends, Monsieur.
But I think when you're dealing with people's families and when they see potential change in this magnitude to be introduced, even in a report that will take maybe a year to come, you can understand the alarm. And I'm just wondering if there's any way that we tend to hear this a lot, where a community does not get an awful lot of notice before they feel compelled that they have to speak to a committee. If there's any way that staff can make this easier for folks, give them at least 2 weeks so that they can organize, collect their thoughts and make their first presentations, I think would be very appreciated. And I would like to advocate for that. So that's all I will say on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair Eglai, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of quick questions for staff, just for clarity. So there seems to be a little bit of confusion out there about what the report's intending to do, I think. So my understanding is that there is no intention to close out this service. The intention is to move this service to a location that you're going to recommend will have better access for people who are challenged because of lack of subsidy or other reasons to get access to a Francophone daycare. Is that correct?
Chair, correct. We had to bring back this review for council because of the audit recommendation. So we presented the review of what we found. Now it's to bring this back to council to say, how can we transition this center to a high needs area, continue the Francophone services, while we also continue to work with the landlord and a not-for-profit provider in the current Pinocchio location. And if we can look at this from really try to seamlessly transition this, we would be potentially increasing the overall Francophone spaces while maintaining the existing location as well.
Kind of jump to my second question, which is that staff confirmed that staff intends to work with the current landlord to have another space put in there. And am I to understand that your staff's recommendation to the landlord is that if a new daycare operator went in there, that it should also offer Francophone services?
Absolutely, right. With our data that we have and just continuing these needed services, which are critical for the Francophone families, we want to maintain what we have there, right? But also just reinvesting our city services to a high needs area as well, so that we're serving those families who face the various significant systematic barriers, and really focusing on, new immigrants, families who are on Ontario Works, low income, all these families, and we feel we can do that in a different location while maintaining the other location as well, both Francophone services.
So in the event that the location is shifted and I'm a parent with a child in the daycare at that point in time, what are my options? Do I get first dibs, if you will, on following the daycare to the new location? How would that work for a parent?
Yeah, Chair, we're going to have to think about all this and how to seamlessly transition, right? This is why we're kind of flagging the importance of being ahead of this and being proactive. We've gone through too many of these where we get little notice and it takes a significant amount of time to transition. So we will be putting a high priority on trying to seamlessly transition this for parents. So at a high level, if we do know eventually down the road where we're going to have to close and bring another person in, families who are going to enter this program will know that information coming in. And we can always help from placement coordination from our fee subsidy team and our system planning team to help parents navigate that and different choices. But those are the pieces we need to figure out within this business plan and figure out how we can really look at seamlessly transitioning it. And that's why we need the time to do that correctly.
And finally, can you I don't know if you have this information with you today, but if not, if you could share it after the fact, can you tell us what percentage of the current families using Pinocchio are in fact being subsidized versus full fee paying parents?
Yeah, Chair, I don't have the specifics on the exact families right now. And to be fair to them, I don't know if I'd want to divulge personal type of information. Just bringing it back to our review, right? We did look at 3 years of information of fee subsidies. And as the score kind of predicts in Pinocchio, the last 3 years, we weren't serving as many families as we need to meet that mandate. So the percentage is lower, especially in comparison to other city sites.
And you say to meet that mandate, is there a fixed percentage that you expect to meet or you want to meet at any given center?
Yeah, well, so just to clarify what we did, we looked at the two aspects of what council's mandate is, the usage of fee subsidies and other community providers in the area. So we did set a score of 70%. We wanted that 70% as well because of inclusivity, right? We were bringing that up. We want to be responsive. And the reality too is in childcare, families' needs change and go. That's why we looked at the 3 years of data to say, what's the trend? What's the trend over the last 3 years? So that 70% is what we looked at with those two aspects. And we wanted to ensure overall we were significantly meeting council's mandate for all these centers, realizing the inclusivity and the changing needs that we needed to accept. So that's what we looked at in the council's mandate review.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. We now have Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Kavanagh, please go ahead.
Thank you. I thought I was lower on the list. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was concerned at first that you were talking about not having a daycare center at all, that you were handing it over to a nonprofit altogether, even at the new location. That's what it sounded like. So just a second, my device needs to be plugged in. There, so I don't lose power. Thank you. So for the Pinocchio Center, I guess the big difference is that these parents got obviously very, very high quality care with the municipality. We pay our staff a lot more than a nonprofit. Is that the case?
Chair, through you, yeah, maybe if I can just speak to the quality piece a little bit too. I would just like to point out that many of our not-for-profits have high quality as well. And from a rate perspective as well, we all have very average rates between the partners that we deal with for subsidies as well. But Councillor, as you referenced, the biggest difference sometimes between our centers and a community not-for-profit provider is the rates, what they pay. And that's what the sector has highlighted as one of the biggest issues in childcare is those rates. And that's a large portion of where our municipal funds go to pay our staff. And that's where the needed work between the province and the feds have to consider the quality aspect and paying women and the childcare workers appropriately.
Which I appreciate, that we pay our staff more, and because it should be paid more. Everybody should be paid more for that job. It's a huge job, and it's a highly important job. So I appreciate it. But I think that's part of the reason why we got high quality staff and high quality care. So I'm hoping that is part of what that is transitioned. I wanted to ask questions about Foster Farm. Foster Farm is in my ward, and very concerned about the idea that it's not up to par, and the fact that it's been cited in this report. I'm also on the board for Ottawa Community Housing, and I've reached out to them as well. I think there needs to be some more communications, because if this facility has been not meeting the mark, I want to know why conversations didn't start earlier to rectify the situation. I realize that there is some physical compromises in terms of that you can't, in terms of access to the outdoors, etc. But is it possible to work together with Ottawa Community Housing to make this a better facility? My concern is there's not much alternative space there that you can move to. I don't want to see another Bayshore where it's just closed down and forgotten about. This is a big concern for me, because it's a high needs area. This is very, very important. And Ottawa Community Housing should be a strong partner with us. So I want to know if we can work together to make this a better facility for those kids.
Chair, through you, absolutely. The communication and partnership with Ottawa Community Housing is going to be needed. We will be increasing the communication. Again, maybe just a bit of our intent. Our intent was to bring this report for awareness. Now with that business case and the capital financing plan we can now take the needed time to work with all our stakeholders and partners to look at what options are available, and see this. And that's really from lessons learned from past experiences that many of you have brought up. This is the needed thing we need to do to make sure we have the proactive time to address these concerns, because it's not easy addressing, a licensed center, which can often take 6 months to a year, even just to meet the licensing inspections. So we need the needed time to be proactive with this to ensure we don't go through things we've done in the past. And that's a big reason why we wanted to bring these issues forward for awareness.
I appreciate that, and I hope to be part of the conversations. I'm on the Client Services Committee of Ottawa Community Housing, as well as being the area councillor. I'm very, very concerned, and I want to make sure that we meet the needs for these kids. It's unfortunate that it's been cited, and I hope that we can do better on behalf of those families who desperately need that care. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As somebody who likes to own their mistakes, I would like to apologize to Councillor Deans. On one side of the screen, I had Councillor Kavanaugh first, and on the other, I had you first. My sincere apologies. You were next, so I'll turn it over to you now for 5.
Apology accepted, no problem. And good morning, everyone. Well, what shone through to me from hearing the public delegations this morning is just how high a regard residents in our communities hold municipal childcare. And so, Jason, I think that's a tribute to you and your whole team that we're providing such high quality services in our community. And I can certainly appreciate the families of Pinocchio, why they would not like to see that childcare center transitioned out of their neighborhood. I guess my question is priority given to subsidized families?
Chair, yes. In our centers, we prioritize subsidized families. We do a lot of outreach with our fee subsidy team to help all fee subsidy families with placement coordination. And then the biggest thing too is parents have a choice, right, with their fee subsidies of where they attend as well. But our supervisors, our fee subsidy teams, we're reaching out and always constantly prioritizing those subsidized families on our wait list.
So if there's 115 families on the Pinocchio wait list, none of them are fee subsidy families?
Chair, just to clarify, the 115 is both, right? And there is some fee subsidy families on there, right? There is fee subsidy families accessing these services. I think what we've highlighted in the mandate review is that the number of fee subsidy families are significantly lower than our other 9 sites, and that we need to transition that site to meet council's mandate to serve more of those families.
I wanted to talk a bit about the mandate because I'm having trouble remembering how we actually centered on the mandate that we have. But does the mandate include the need to provide Francophone spaces and spaces for diverse communities?
Chair, no, there was no mention when the report went on Francophone communities other than maintaining the existing services that we have.
Which is the 2 Francophone childcare centers.
Correct.
So if we transition Pinocchio to a new location, it will still be a Francophone childcare center?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the reason I wanted to put these 2 reports together this morning is because I don't think that we should separate out a discussion about the future of Pinocchio without thinking about where the future of childcare is going in our community and across the country. And in reading the first report and listening to you this morning, Jason, I mean, what came through to me is it appears that we are on the eve of a national child care strategy for the whole country. And with it coming a lot more funding into our communities. And I just wonder about the timing of considering taking a highly valued child care center out of a neighborhood where it is obviously appreciated and wanted, if at the same time, we're anticipating getting more funding and perhaps at the same time being able to expand our mandate and keep that center. And like, I have no doubt that there are a lot of high needs neighborhoods that need our services in their communities, but perhaps on the eve of a national childcare strategy, there's room for both. And I just wondered if you could comment on that.
Yeah, Chair, absolutely. Yes, it is an exciting time in childcare with all of our partners, really seeing, that this is what's needed for the childcare, sector, to do everything that we all wanted it to do. So absolutely, I completely agree with you, right? Could be potential opportunities with the National Childcare Plan. We unfortunately don't have a lot of information on it yet. However, part of the consideration of bringing this back to council in Q1 2023 is so that we can consider that, right? At that time, we would have more information, we would know more, and council would have the ability to assess that and make potentially different decisions around this location, right? I think for me, it's important though that we have the time to look into what the options are, and then we can reconsider that when we bring it forward in Q1 2023 for council.
Okay, and when you were considering the impacts of the pandemic on the future of childcare in our community, I mean, regardless of the national strategy, which I think is hugely important, but I think, we have to learn from this pandemic going forward. And one of the key issues for me that has come out of this is that childcare is an essential service. It impacts women and men differently in our community. It is about families and their well-being, and it perhaps has more importance, if you were to weigh importance of all of our services, than perhaps it did pre-pandemic. And I guess I'm just wondering if maybe there shouldn't be a third report today that talks about how we might consider expanding both our mandate and the amount of municipal funding that we're putting into this sector.
Would you like me to comment?
Yeah, I really would. Yeah, like has your department been talking about that? How you actually, I mean, I could be very parochial about this, frankly, and say, I have 2 perfect sites in low-income neighborhoods in my ward that both would meet our current mandate, and I think we should be expanding our mandate to talk about diversity in our communities, and they would meet that mandate too. And I would like to get 2 of those centers in my ward, but I have a feeling that my colleagues would like to see more centers in their wards too, that are municipal childcare centers, high quality centers, that the families would feel as good about as those families we heard from this morning that felt about Pinocchio. And maybe the National Child Care Strategy will help to deliver that, but I also think there's municipal responsibility here. And have we, as a community, have you as a department been talking about the potential for expanding our services in our community?
Yeah, so thanks, Chair. Maybe I'll start at the high level. I mean, our system plan is talking about all that, right? Increasing access, increasing affordability, increasing quality. We've worked, a lot with our system partners to do that. The national plan would obviously change things drastically, but our plan really aligns well to that. No, we haven't considered expanding our municipal childcare centers. We don't have that direction from council. This was the first time we've brought back a municipal childcare review to that. However, like the national plan, like I said, could change this drastically, and we would have to bring, those considerations back for council to consider.
And maybe a question to Ms. Gray then. Donna, I'm sure you've been involved in post-pandemic discussions at the city about how our services need to transition as a result of lessons learned through the pandemic. And at that level in the city, have there been conversations about expanding municipal childcare?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So right now what we're doing is looking at kind of what is the impact coming out of COVID to all our organizations in the community, and trying to assess if that's immediate income or immediate impact or longer term impact. But I think Jason's comments around childcare in particular, there obviously is a real focus nationally on childcare and what that program is going to look like as we move forward. And because the program is, highly legislated provincially, we would look for the direction of the province as well in terms of that service. In terms of, thinking about the future of it, this review has really given us an opportunity to take a look at that, to say, what is the current gaps in our community? The situation has changed since council last approved the system plan, and the context has changed. And so I think that this gives us an opportunity doing this review to really reassess that impact, what that looks like, and bring that back to council in 2023 with hopefully better understanding of what that national program will be, and then what would be the space that council may want to consider. Council set the mandate for the municipal childcare, but council as well can locally, change that mandate as you see new information and as the context changes. And that's where we think this report gives you the opportunity to do that. And we would welcome that review and consideration of it, given the impact in the community.
Right. Well, thank you for that. I guess my hesitancy on the item number 2, the center review, is we're creating a lot of angst for families who are currently accessing the services of Pinocchio in a time where perhaps it won't be necessary to transition that center out of that community, and perhaps there'll be opportunity for new municipal childcare centers in other high needs neighborhoods, and perhaps we could do both. And I just worry that it is a lot of angst for families if it's not going to be necessary. In terms of Foster Farm, having been there, I absolutely see the need for a higher quality facility. And Councillor Kavanaugh talked about not a lot of being available, but would we be talking about building a new purpose-built facility to replace Foster Farm?
Chair, through you, I think all options are on the table, right? We want to take the time to talk with all partners, OCHC, looking at all possible options, and that's what we would bring back to council in 2023. We don't know what's possible, but there is all kinds of opportunities throughout the city with growth, affordable housing, different aspects like that. So that's what we want to take. We want to take the next year and a bit to really plan what that could look like and what the possibilities are, with a high focus on that seamless transition if there is going to be any changes. And anytime you do repairs and maintenance, like, you do lose some service delivery. So we want to be able to make sure we can seamlessly transition these services and make sure they're available to families.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Just on time, Councillor, thank you very much. Councillor Deans raises a good point here. Because there's so much lead time between right now and when we'll come back to council, and there seems to be an opportunity here with more federal funding coming for childcare. By that time, some of the existing families that are using Pinocchio may have gone to kindergarten. We may have had the opportunity to bring people from the priority list requiring subsidies into Pinocchio, and we may be meeting that threshold of our policy by that time. Will that be considered? Or this is not a done deal, right? So, I mean, if by 2023, we are actually serving the clientele that we seek to serve under the policy, will there be a chance to review, this recommendation?
Chair, yes, absolutely, right? That's all the data that we presented is the facts that we have them. Things will change. I will just say that, we don't have any certainty of the national program and additional funding. The province and the feds are still negotiating that. But absolutely, right? With the COVID-19 impacts and how people are seeing how essential these supports are, we need the time to plan and to do this right. And if something does change, we can present it at that time for council to make a different direction. But we need the time as well to do this and just plan this out. It's not, like I said, it's not easy transitioning a site or figuring out where land or what options are available. So we need that time. And until we have that time to bring it back to council, nothing's changing. Those services are going to continue. So yes, we will have new families. And like I said earlier, this could take up to 5 years where we're still operating both these sites until we have a plan in place. And it is nice, at least, that there is some opportunities with this federal plan.
Yeah, it does seem to me that 5 years from now, it could be a completely different situation in Pinocchio, where we could be actually serving the clientele that our policy states we should be serving. So I think that it's important to have that flexibility within, this decision today, because we could find ourselves in a position where we do have a majority of subsidized individuals using this service at Pinocchio by then. So I'm glad that we're talking about it, but at the same time, we just want to make sure that, if we do get to a point where, this is, a bit of a moot point because of the clientele that we're servicing, that we don't, make a rash decision. So I do appreciate that clarification. And thanks for the opportunity to ask that question. So we'll move on now to Councillor Fleury, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I might have to get back on because I do have questions on the first report, but I'll focus right now on Pinocchio. Thank you, Jason, and thank you to colleagues for engagement on this. I think a lot of elements are clarified and answered. I'll start with maybe Councillor Dean's and Chair Luloff's point, which is we need to talk about what the potential of what a national program would look like, but we can't get ahead of ourselves. There'll be a next federal election, which depending on the results might guide the future of that and bring some clarity. So we have to cite our goals. We have to be patient until the actual, the feds have announced this. They're a minority government. They haven't advanced it. So let's be clear that right now, the $30 billion plan is not in our pocket. There is certainly an aspiration, and I'm with Jason. I think it is a window, a unique window of opportunity for childcare, and we at the City of Ottawa need to be ready. Jason, on the Pinocchio front, I have a number of elements, and as you know, you and I have chatted about services. We've chatted about the lessons learned from Beausoleil in the past, and so on. Can you clarify a number of things? So right now, with this report, you'd be conducting a review, both for Pinocchio and Foster Farm. If the federal environment changes, the report would be changed. If there's an opportunity for us to grow the municipal operated centers, you would, today's direction wouldn't anchor you, right? It would just, for you, it's triggering a review of the current data.
Chair, correct. Today's decision is really directing us to go do that planning time and the work that's needed to really look into the options. If any variables change, of course, we will consider that as part of what we bring back to council, including the national program and any other aspects that change, like we're talking about if parents' needs change and the different dynamics with subsidized.
I'm looking for either a direction or clarity on a few things. So one, which is, Beausoleil reopened as Beausoleil non-for-profit, but it kept the name, which was a very valuable thing. To me, Pinocchio, although city operated right now, needs to stay at Sussex. So can that be a mandate and a direction that the spirit of Pinocchio at Sussex Francophone service be a direction in any future reporting or negotiations with the we're saying the landlord, but it's the federal government in that location.
Correct. And Chair, yes, I mean, we can take that under direction to consider that as part of our business plan that we bring back to council and give us the time to just look into any legalities and different things like that. But absolutely, we can look into the possibility of that.
Okay. And there was a number of questions relating to fees. So fees change yearly, there's inflation. By the time a report comes back, things might have changed. We talked about the national program, but the spirits of it are fair, I think. So right now, if you're subsidized, you can float. So you can go wherever you want and the subsidy applies. So I'm less concerned about that piece from that perspective, but I am concerned relating to just for parents who aren't subsidized. I think we heard from Madame Landry, who said, I think she said, I'm paying $65 a day. So can we look at that consideration of what a non-subsidized parent pays today and include that in our negotiations with the landlord and intentions for that site?
Chair, absolutely. I think with any of these transitions, right, we have to do our best between all partners to minimize any impacts to families. And I can tell you, our sector partners do have very similar rates. We've noted that in the report. It's in the service plan. We do have very similar rates. I don't have it in front of me, but the $65 does sound about average for most of our providers. Obviously, there's differences. Even our service plan speaks to the need for more consistent rates, which is something we'll be working on with our plan. But yeah, absolutely, we can take that in consideration. I know everyone will have the parent at the forefront when we go to transition this, and it's probably something they would want to say, well, let's continue those existing fees. So we'll consider that as part of any effort we can do working with the two partners.
And then my final one to you, Jason. So can you commit that with a protection of a non-for-profit running Pinocchio at Sussex, speculative, but say that be a French operation, and that the city in its transition, that it be an overall increase of Francophone childcare services spaces with this option. Like, I think that needs to be committed to reassure parents and also our commitment as a city.
Chair, through you, yeah, I mean, we're of the same opinion in the sense of, back to what I was just talking about, that seamless transition for parents. We would all have to consider the Francophone services, and any funding or supports that we put towards this will ensure those services remain Francophone.
And future city site.
And the future city site as well, yes. If the Pinocchio moves to a different site, that's obviously considered as well.
So, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'll wrap up my comments on Pinocchio and then get back on the list. Jason, I'll speak French, just it's more of a comment. Moi, j'appuie l'analyse qui va être faite.
I support the analysis that's going to be done. I think there's going to be a lot of factors that we are going to have to take into account. There might be an election, a federal election. I'd like the city to offer more municipal services in the whole of the city. And it is sure that there's communities at risk that need the presence of the city. The same thing for Francophone communities. A lot of the realities are very important. I'm wearing two hats today. I think that the municipality should go in the communities that are more at risk. I think that goes with our responsibility as a government. We have to go where services are less offered. And I think the mandate is an issue, but what the city is telling us that it's going to continue being a daycare. It's going to continue to be a Francophone daycare. It's reassuring. We won't have to fight. The space is going to be available at Pinocchio for Francophone parents. So I think that we have to respect our mandate and reassure parents. And I thank parents who came today. I also thank the employees of the city. It's not easy for them. They are answering questions of parents. Are you going to close the daycare? Are you not going to close it? Thank you, Jason, for this analysis.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. I was late on the board and my colleagues asked a lot of the questions I had, so I will just offer a quick comment, if I may. J'ai été heureuse que le rapport indique expressement que l'accès à des services.
I was pleased to hear that the report stressed the importance of Francophone daycare in Ottawa. I represent a sector that is very far from Pinocchio, but during my recent campaign, I've often heard families say that there's always a need in the community for daycare services, more daycare services in French. So I agree that we have to continue to recognize the need for all kinds of Francophone services in the city, and notably Francophone services that help the children keep their Franco-Ontarian heritage. So we have to also take care of the transition. So I want to say that I'm totally in favor for an increase of Francophone services. And I think the report should reassure everyone on Pinocchio's transition. That's all. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Up next, we've got Councillor McKinney, so I'll turn the mic over to them. Please go ahead. Councillor McKinney? Oh, was I on mute? My apologies.
You were. I was trying to read your lips. I think you said my name.
apologies.
Thank you. I just want to make brief comments as well. Most of the questions obviously have been addressed that we had. You know, I had my daughter in St. Luke, so in a municipal daycare for a few years while I worked at the city, as a matter of fact. And I can tell you, even though you know, I was not in need of a subsidy, and had the means of you know, probably locating her at a few different centers. To have lost that center would have been very, very difficult, because our municipally run centers are very well run. And as are the majority of our nonprofit centers. I've worked part-time in some, you know, when I was younger and in school. I've been involved on the boards of many of our nonprofit childcare centers, mostly in Councillor Kavanaugh's ward, where I lived in Ottawa Community Housing at the time. So I understand the attachment to your daycare center. And I wish we were here today talking about how we can expand our municipal centers. I wish we were here today having heard that we are going to have a national childcare program that's going to guarantee affordable and accessible childcare to everyone, and that we were being asked to look at, you know, where else can we locate, but we're not. And we have a mandate at the city to ensure that we are meeting the needs of families who do face, you know, barriers and systemic challenges. And we also have a commitment and need to remember that commitment to our Francophone communities. So to, you know, if this were not about transitioning to another Francophone center, I don't think we'd even be having the discussion. The answer would be no, but it is. And when we think about the center today and look at, you know, the community that it resides in, it's not a community that comprises of families who are high risk, high needs, and it doesn't serve the families who have those systemic challenges. So it's, you know, it makes sense that, you know, that we transition that Francophone center to another Francophone center that will meet those needs. But we can't, you know, we have to take into consideration, you know, the displacement that will happen as a result. Will happen over several years. The kids at the center will have, who are there today, will have transitioned out. The families, you know, can be bigger, and you can have, you know, 2 or 3 children. So I recognize that what is happening for families today who are in there, and it is my hope as well. I think Councillor Luloff put it well, as did Councillor Deans. Hopefully we're back here, you know, at a time once this analysis has been done and we have more funding and more ways of meeting the needs, because we don't have enough capacity in the city or anywhere in this country, really, but we certainly don't have the capacity that we need for affordable, safe, and you know, culturally appropriate daycare, that childcare that we need. So thank you to staff. I know this has been difficult, and thank you to all the residents who came out to speak today. I very much appreciate hearing from you.
Je suis complètement d'accord avec vos commentaires. Je pense que c'est tellement important qu'on
I agree totally with what you say. It's so important to expand this program especially for the subsidized spaces, and also to protect the Francophone spaces and to expand there to give more opportunities to Francophone families to have subsidized spaces and around the city too, because it's true what Councillor Fleury said. We have a Francophone population that is growing and they're everywhere in the city. So it's important that we look at this policy and make sure that we are giving opportunities to families to access spaces like this. So now for a second round, Councillor Fleury, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to get back to what you just said. There's no more subsidized spaces. Once a parent has a subsidy, they can go wherever they want in the city. It's important to mention it because before all the spaces were protected physically in one place, but it's not the case anymore. So I recognize nevertheless what you said.
I think we're all on the same page on this, and we all value our city-operated services and want to grow that. On the COVID space, and I want to jump in on a couple of elements you raised in the report. First off, thank you. It's been a challenging year. You've pivoted. Your team has pivoted. The parents have pivoted. It's just been unreal. So I want to tip my hat off to you and the entire team for continuing to offer childcare for our essential workers and for being so flexible on hours. So just start with that piece. There's a number of elements in the report that to me is just, I'm looking for clarification. So we're saying that our childcare are now all fully open, and I'm saying citywide here, not city only operated, but there's no mention of the spaces for school-age children. And I wonder if you could comment on that, because there's a range of services within the spaces, and I wonder if they're all fully open from newborns to school-age children.
Yeah, Chair, through you, just a bit of clarity. I mean, throughout this whole pandemic, things have been open and closed. So currently, right now, the school-age spaces are closed. Right, that was a provincial order to close the school-age spaces. During many of the closure periods, the 0 to 4 age programs were open, and to the blessing of many families who needed to access those services. And that's through the whole school closures, right? That's where many people realized how essential these supports were. So those are currently closed. They will remain. They will be reopening in the summer months, just after school, June 25th, I believe. The province announced that as part of their reopening plan. That summer camps, day camps can then open up, and as well as the school-aged license programs for the summer months, which would give some added supports for families during this difficult time.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I'm trying to kind of square off a number of facts that you, or understand the range of facts that you presented in between page 13 and page 14 of the report, from wait list to eligibility to the shift of subsidized. Can you maybe let me understand? So what is your understanding of the reduction of, I think it's 30% of parents that are eligible for subsidy? Like the range has shifted quite a lot. It's 30%. My initial gut was CERB, but can you maybe speak to that shift?
Yeah, Chair, through you, I'll try to provide some context, and then Council, just let me know if there's an area you want me to highlight more. You know, our fee subsidy numbers have dropped. It's not to say, you know, necessarily it's about ineligibility. That is definitely part of it. But what we've seen through our family surveys and different things, there are many aspects that are you know, stopping parents from accessing these services. There was a closure period. There are still service disruptions with COVID where, you know, some of the safety measures that are needed, but if there's an active case, there's 14-day closures. Some families may not be able to afford it, right? If there is loss of job, you know, they may not be able to afford their partial fees. I can tell you we've been doing everything within our power under the provincial flexibility to ensure families continue to be eligible, you know, looking at job activities, different aspects to ensure they can go on. But there's so many different things going on with the economy that people could have lost their job, or like I said, just can't afford even the partial fee and wanted, or, you know, the biggest thing too that we noticed was families were fearful of bringing their children back into a group setting, right? So then they tried to balance, you know, school, work, and childcare all on once, and that's where all these mental health and well-being issues are coming up.
Maybe the last one on that data. So there appears to be 28% vacancy rate, but then there's a waiting list, and I can't understand how that hasn't shifted. So I'm curious can you maybe give us some insights there as well?
Yeah, sure, Chair, through you. Here's the way we kind of explained it in the report, but just to summarize, you know, what we're seeing is the interest in childcare is still there, right? It's pretty much the same as before COVID, right? Families need these essential supports. But we are seeing, as oddly as you're pointing out, there are still vacant spaces. And I think that just presents that families are still not comfortable with returning to a group setting, right? That there could be many reasons. Many of them noted that they're waiting for, you know, broader community vaccinations. So we are anticipating into the fall, by year end, that, you know, fingers crossed, everything gets back to normal and our fee subsidy numbers go back up to 8,000. But I think that's the biggest thing with those vacancies is between, you know, job loss, income, safety concerns, that some families are just not comfortable with accessing those. And that's why we needed the additional flexibility with our provincial funding to help support providers through this as well, because many of them need those spaces full for their viability.
Okay, and then my thank you for that. And my final piece, you know, when you came on board and created a work plan and we talked about a number of strategies, one of them was, to me, was frustrating as a parent, but also the feedback we were hearing from parent was the expectation, right? People sign up to the city system, pick their favorite, and never hear back. And then each group are setting out their own outreach, and it's a bit confusing. So on page 14, you make a reference to a new family portal. Can you? I'm hoping that is the one-stop shop, and that we set clear expectation with all providers. And am I too hopeful?
Chair, through you, I'll give a bit of an overview, right? As Councillor, you referenced, part of our service plan definitely highlighted the need for increased information, awareness, and transparency with the registry and waitlist. Even throughout the pandemic, even though we had to shift and be nimble and really focus on vulnerability, we were still able to enhance that area because it is a priority for us. So we did make some significant changes to the waitlist with this family portal, easier access, more information. As well, one of the additional pieces we've started building with our providers is we now have this vacancy manager information. That's how we've gotten this information of where the vacancies are throughout that. We are in the initial stages of that. We still have to do some work with service providers and do some quality assurance, but within our 2021 and 22 work plan is still those continued enhancements to figure out how we can now use that data to give better information for parents to how to navigate the system.
Thank you. Those are all my questions. And again, Jason, thank you to you and your team. It's been a rough year, and you're getting through it. So hopefully there's light at the end here.
Thank you very much. This has been a very thoughtful discussion, and I do really appreciate everyone's intervention on this. It's good to be able to hear from the public about how much they value our municipal childcare spaces. It is a testament to the good work, Jason, that you and your group are doing. That people are so passionate about these spaces. So again, thank you to committee members for such a thoughtful discussion on these. So on item number 1, we do have a motion. So I just want to ask the committee coordinator to put the motion up on the screen. We'll go through the motion and then to the report as amended, and then on to item number 2. We have two additional items after this. So if we can have the Vice Chair read the motion.
Yeah, whereas on April 19, 2021, the federal government announced $30 billion new investment over the next 5 years and an $8.3 billion ongoing for early learning and childcare and Indigenous early learning and childcare starting in 2021-2022 to move towards a universal childcare system. And whereas Children's Services staff support building a national program and system of early learning and childcare services that focuses on increased access, affordability, quality, and responsiveness. And whereas a robust early learning system is essential for families, especially women and those disproportionately impacted. And vitally important, Ottawa's economic renewal, whereas a national program has the potential to make significant positive impacts and address issues that families and service providers face both historically and those further exacerbated as a result of the pandemic. Whereas due to COVID-19 pandemic, the province delayed a previously proposed change to the City of Ottawa's childcare funding allocation for program delivery and administration to 2022. And whereas the current proposed cost-sharing funding changes now planned to take effect in 2022 will cause financial pressures on the childcare sector while it is still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas recommendation 3 of the staff report recommends Council reaffirm the City of Ottawa's support for building a national childcare program and system of early learning and childcare services to focus on increased access, affordability, quality, going too fast here, okay, there we go. Quality and responsiveness, which is essential to the COVID-19 pandemic response and recovery by directing staff to actively monitor federal developments and engage in provincial planning discussions. Therefore, be it resolved, the committee recommend Council request that Mayor Watson and the Chair of Community Protective Services Committee send a follow-up letter to the Premier Doug Ford and Minister of Education Stephen Lecce, requesting that the proposed cost-sharing funding changes be eliminated as the impacts would significantly affect the sector for building a national program which is essential to COVID-19 pandemic response and recovery and will benefit families, children, social well-being, and the economy.
On the motion?
Carried.
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 On the report on item number 1?
Carried.
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 On item number 2?
Carried.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Councillor Fleury, please go ahead.
Well, just carried with the directions I did signify.
Yes, of course, yes, carried with the directions. Okay, we have just a quick second. So item number 3 is Office of the City Clerk. So as we know, the City Clerk reports back on inquiries and motions from Community and Protective Services for the period ending on 8 June, so that the Community and Protective Services Committee receive this report for information. Is this item received?
Received.
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 Now, moving on to information previously distributed at the beginning of the meeting, we did have a motion to lift item B from the consent agenda. So I'll turn it over now to Councillor McKenney, so that I believe that they can introduce a direction to staff on this item. So please, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. So you saw the direction to staff that was up earlier. I think that what we're looking at here is, in recognition that unlike our taxi services in the city, we allow PTCs not to provide accessible service by paying what is a very minimal surcharge. That was established when we established the bylaw at 7 cents. Today we, have IPD in front of us that is advising us that it's been raised by 3 cents, but that is still very minimal amount. And it really doesn't contribute to providing accessibility, amenities, and services in the city, really. And while it's voluntary, it's still far below what many other cities charge. So the direction here is to look at the. I don't know if we want to put it back up on the screen.
Thank you.
Yeah, there we are. So it's, just to ask staff in the next term of council to review the feasibility for introducing an additional licensing fee, because that is not voluntary. We have the ability to license through fee categories, the vehicle, the companies, and to put those categories into better fleet size ranges. So it would ask staff to look at that, those additional licensing fee categories. And I would also ask staff to consider imposing a limit on the number of private transportation company vehicles. We know that research has shown from many jurisdictions that the congestion that results from far too many PTCs on the road, more traffic accidents, increasing GHGs, which affects our climate change. And so unregulated, allowed to just grow with no cap, really puts our transit system, our transit ridership in more, at more risk, and so it would, I think it would be incumbent upon us to, as a council, on the next term of council, to ask staff to review these two requirements and see what staff bring back. We've had the discussion with staff, and they are in agreement.
I believe then there was a question to staff.
No, we could ask staff if they're in agreement. I asked them myself, but yeah, of course, probably should ask them on the public record. Thanks.
No problem. Would staff wish to comment before we move on to further questions on this item?
I'd be happy, Chair, to say that we do agree on the public record. Thank you.
Perfect. We'll give it an opportunity now. Welcome to the committee, Councillor Menard. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for your intervention on this item. Over to you for 5 minutes for comments on this item.
Thanks so much, Chair. And yeah, I've been here listening to the other very important item that came in advance of this. I think that this committee had a really good discussion on that. It was nice to hear that happen. I think on this item, thank you to Councillor McKenney for bringing the direction forward. I think councillors will know that back in 2019, we had a motion that was supported at council to look at an increase in the fee from 7 cents based on a KPMG report on the subject back in 2016 that advised us for asking for 30 cents. And so, fairly modest sum, but compared to other municipalities or other cities across North America, but still something that we've fallen short of to this point. I think it's important we recognize too that on the issue of a surcharge being voluntary, and that some of the claims that it means we have little or no leverage at the bargaining table with these companies, I think we do have some leverage. The city in effect governs the existence of these companies in Ottawa. And we provide them permission to operate here through regulatory powers that we have over them. And so the city can use its bargaining power to introduce voluntary compliance measures on top of what is possible within the scope of the permittable bylaw we have, such as a higher accessibility surcharge from industry participants reliant on government permission to operate. And so we really, in short, I think have leverage as needed to do what is right for residents in this case, and I think the recent negotiation for a higher surcharge, some evidence that this bargaining power does exist, and so I've my office and my staff in my office have released a vehicle for hire report just this past week, and showing the increasingly exponential costs from these companies as we put on the road. Councillor McKenney mentioned a couple of these, but certainly our CO2 emissions, more traffic incidents, wear and tear on city infrastructure, and the real drain on our transit and transit revenues as well. And so Uber and Lyft each have thousands of cars on the road in normal times, and the existing license fee brackets that are spoken to in the direction of 1 to 24, 25 to 99, and then 100 plus doesn't make a lot of sense. The big players have far more than this, and we know that as quantitative thresholds are hit, the cost to the public and environment go up. And so the no fee bracket, the fee brackets that we've been talking about really should be investigated, which is what staff are saying they could do with this. And on the same token, a cap on affiliated vehicles should be looked at and considered as part of this review. So appreciate staff support on the direction, and Councillor McKenney bringing this forward and excellent comments on this, and happy to have the committee consider this. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fleury, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it is awkward that we're not able to get the amount of accessibility. I hope that we can find a creative way in the revision to capture those objectives and those needs by council. I simply want to clarify the motion, because there's a lot of policy around this. When we decided to go to the PTC route, we removed the cap for a purpose, right? It's for the sector, it's for the organizations to decide and monitor and compete on that environment. If I had it my way, I would remove the cap on taxi licensing. I would open that shop up, because I think that would open up a very different conversation. So I'm fine that staff studied that, that direction, but I want to clarify that, I want to understand that it's not a direction we're giving. It's just an analysis point to come back when there is a review. Can we get that confirmation from staff?
Chief Ayat?
Yes, that's correct. We're going to do an analysis, and if you want more details on that, Christine Hartig is online, as Roger had another legal matter to deal with today. So I think, Christine, can you comment on that, please?
Madam Hartig?
Oh, sorry. I'm a novice. Yes, we can certainly, we can certainly consider having a look at that, keeping in mind some of the previous analysis on that subject. Looking at how the industry may have changed.
Yeah. So Mr. Chair, I see no risk in giving no direction and approving, but I do want to. There's been a long path that got us to PTCs, and some of the fundamentals have to remain in place, or else we compromise the integrity of the PTC program overall. So there's very fair points that Councillor Manal brought up relating to GHGs, which also apply to the taxi industry. So we got to be cognizant of those realities as a whole, and not open up a number of things. So I'm glad to support the motion, but it doesn't state the future outcome here. It just brings a further analysis point when that report comes forward.
Councillor Osuntieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to answer one of the comments from Councillor Fleury, I think the day we supported the vehicle for hire without those conditions, I think that's the day we made the biggest mistake. But nevertheless, I'm on record, I didn't vote for. Now we see the lack of service to the accessibility community. And I'm not sure, we keep adding more restriction on taxi, and we expect them to do the accessibility work. But in the meantime, those higher company or share company, then they're still exempt from picking up accessibility clients. So I'm not sure if Councillor Manal would like to see that the whole package been reviewed and brought back to us, because I have to admit it, I agree with his motion. I'm going to support it, but I would like to see what impact that continue happen on the accessibility community.
Councillor Menard, would you like to comment on that?
I support Councillor Osuntieri's comments as well. The direction is what it is, and I'm hoping through that we'll get some more information back in a broader sense as he's asking for. I think staff understand the concern overall here. So I'm in agreement where this is a step, hopefully in a better direction for the city next term as well. But I agree with his comments.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this direction? It seems that everybody has spoken in support of it, so I don't think we need to go through the list or anything. But is this direction carried by the committee?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you very much for coming out today, Councillor Menard. We appreciate your engagement on this item. So that's it for IPD. Do we have any notices of motion for consideration at a subsequent meeting? Seeing none. Do we have any inquiries from the committee or members of council?
Mr. Chair, nothing formal, but I would like the data report. I was expecting a data report for shelter use, and I haven't seen any recent data. And I know the team's super busy, but it is relevant to get that data. I thought we were going to get that quarterly, so it's not a formal inquiry, but maybe at the next CPS to have an IPD or a memo on it.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point, Councillor Fleury. Does staff want to comment on the availability of that data, or when they feel that data will be made available to the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we've been working on the data and putting that in an open data format. So I'd be happy to do a report back or an IPD to Community and Protective Services Committee on that item.
Okay, great. I mean, if the information does become available before our next meeting, because we do have a bit of a lag between now and then, please feel free to share that information with committee members, or as you've indicated, that this will be kind of an open data thing. So just give us a heads up, and I think that Councillor Fleury probably would like to see that data before our next meeting, considering there's such a lag. So whatever's whatever works best, we'd appreciate that. So thank you. So thanks again, Councillor Fleury. Do we have any other business?
Chair.
Councillor Kavanaugh has her hand up.
Yes, please, Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you. I don't know if I should have called this earlier, but in terms of the report on our long-term care facilities and the funding that we're putting forward, I had a question. I was wondering if any of what we're doing is working towards butterfly model. Because I'm looking at the investments, and I appreciate we're making investments in our long-term care facilities, some significant one. But one of the things that concerned me was at Peter D. Clark, for example, talking about freshly painted rooms in neutral tones. And I know that we've discussed the butterfly model, and one of the things about the butterfly model is having bright colors and for engaging residents, particularly those with dementia. So my question is anything being put towards that thinking?
So the butterfly model itself is one single brand model of care. There is currently an ongoing working group looking at alternative models to care, one that I sit on. So there is quite a bit of discussion around models of care, but I'll turn it over. I don't know whether or not we have Dean with us, or if GM Gray would like to comment on that. But yeah, I think that I'll allow the question. So please go ahead, Donna, if you have a moment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, Dean isn't on today, but the conversation or the memo that we're talking about today are the ongoing kind of capital facility upgrades. And they are looking, as they're moving forward with those, looking at how they support or can facilitate dementia care in the broadest sense, not to a specific model. So Peter D. Clark is actually quite advanced in some of the modifications that they've actually been making around their main common areas to advance dementia care. And they take that into consideration as they're looking at all their capital investments. But the broader butterfly model or dementia care strategy will come back in the fall. But they do look for opportunities in the...
Oh, you just went on mute.
Sorry, on the broad dementia principles, they do look to apply those on any capital modifications in the interim.
Thank you, Donna. I was just concerned when I saw the neutral tones, because I knew that was something that was emphasized in terms of butterfly model, and it felt like we were going a different direction.
Yeah, there is currently a working group underway that's discussing these dementia care and models of care. So perhaps at a future meeting, well, I'm hearing that we'll be back in the fall to discuss this again. So okay. If in the interim you want to chat with Dean about what's being discussed at the working group, you know, if you need some help facilitating that, I'd be happy to help out. But I think that you're in very close contact with Dean as it is.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Thank you for your question. So again, any other business for the committee today? Listen, before we wrap up, I want to thank everybody again for what was you know, a very fulsome and respectful discussion. I'm really pleased with the way that we were able to dig into these items today. It's certainly becoming of the members of this committee and our guests as well as our delegation. So I truly do appreciate the collaboration and the way that we were able to dig into this in a meaningful way today. Alors, merci tout le monde.
Thank you to all.
Is the motion carried?
Carried.
So we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. The next meeting of Community and Protective Services Committee is actually scheduled for Thursday, September 16th. I'm sure that everybody has received a notification that the August 19th meeting has been canceled. So we will see everybody back in September. Enjoy this long summer. I'll be back with an additional member of my family by that point in time. So very much looking forward to that. I'll be sure to share pictures with everybody as that happens. Again, thank you all so much. Very much looking forward to seeing you all again in September. Although I'm sure we have several other meetings together between now and then. But it's so good to see you all today. And alors, merci beaucoup. And we stand.
Thank you very much.